Everybody, Invisiblekatana here with my review for Ahsoka Part 3, Time to Fly. So before I get into this review, I want to go with the new theory that I came up with, thanks to Sabine slightly tapping into the Force. So I wrote it down here, because 3 for 3, by the way, I think I should say that off the top. 3 for 3, great episode, absolutely loved it. Short, but sweet, definitely enjoyed it. So I'm going to start with this theory that I got, and then we can, go through the episode, the usual ramble. But what if Sabine's power, when she taps into the Force and everything, it's not going to be Force push or Force pull? Although they were teasing it, maybe they will actually show her do a minute Force push or Force pull. I think that would be cool too if it was like a much weaker version. But that kind of goes into the element of what I was thinking for her power. What if she becomes like a sensory type? Like she'll be out there like Neji, for anyone who gets that reference. She can just always sense, the danger better than most people, sight beyond sight type of stuff. Or, it fits in line very well with Rebels. What if she's able to sense things like Kanan did once he actually went blind? Spoilers, but here we are. That would be very interesting, and it would kind of fall in line with her having an ability kind of like his. I'm really liking it to Naruto, because all I can think of is she had that, Neji having the Sharingan, stuff like that, seeing things like slightly clairvoyant. I think that'll be really cool, and that'll be a way to have her character be able to stack up against anyone that kind of comes her way that wields a lightsaber, and maybe a couple fights few and far between, but clearly in the immediate future she's going to be in a lightsaber battle. So her tapping into that, I think would be a really cool way to help her still be able to go toe to toe with someone that can force push and force pull, which she can't really do just yet. Maybe she'll build it up, of course. And they definitely referenced some super secret samurai anime technique that Sabine is probably going to get, called the Zatoichi, which is literally one letter off from Zatoichi, the blind samurai, which was definitely the inspiration for not only Kanan within the show when it actually happened to him, but it was also for General Coda from the Force Unleashed games. So I mean, it's literally one letter off. It's like the movie based on the blind samurai, and it's just I don't know, it's just right there, and I'm like, that would be really cool. It would fit in line with Kanan in multiple ways because of him going blind. That was the whole point, is like a blind samurai sort of thing. And it's kind of a basic, it's one of those things that's a basic use of the Force. That's kind of the whole point. In battles for Jedi, that's their whole thing, is they sense the moves that are coming. The greatest example of that is actually, oddly enough, the greatest example in live action is Rise of the Skywalker, when Ben Solo does that move when he fights against whoever he was fighting. I honestly can't even remember. I think it was the Knights of Ren at that point. Things happened in there, but he fought some people, and there's a part where he does a spin and he puts the lightsaber behind his back, and he does it really early, and then someone hits and he smirks or whatever, and I was like, that's actually the best example for people that don't already know that sort of thing. That's how Jedi fight. They kind of sense what's coming ahead of time, whereas on the Sith side, you typically strike, which is why we already have a difference with obviously Sabine being Mandalorian. But it would fit in line so incredibly well if that was what she did as her main thing. They've been tapping into characters that have really specific ability. They even do it in this, actually, where Ahsoka has almost the sense echo stuff, which, unless I just missed it, it was definitely invented in the Jedi games, unless I'm mistaken. So I'm pretty sure they made that move for Cal Kestis, and it's popped up in something else as well, where it was that's people doing the sense echo. And it was in Clone Wars. It definitely showed up before. I don't think it wasn't nearly as popular because obviously it was the game version. Let's face it, a lot of people weren't watching Clone Wars like they should have. But God, what is that dude's name? He's referenced in the Obi-Wan show. He hooked up with somebody with Sith. I can't think of the dude's names, but he's got the black across his eyes. If you're super nerdy, you know where I'm going with it. Point is, they have characters that are, that tap into very specific abilities, and that's their thing. I think that would be cool if it was for Sabine, whereas not big shows of Force, and it allows her to, that's her big thing. Even if she gets Force pushed or whatever, no one can physically get up on her. You'd have to fight it, at a distance, and she can figure her way out of that, I'm sure, with something cool. So I was like, okay, then, random theory, that might be her ability. It'll be it'll basically be the most extreme version of just, hey, here's Luke putting down the blast shield, which is what they did. It was full samurai mode. She actually had a straight up samurai garb in there, fighting with Boken and stuff like that. It was amazing. I absolutely love the opening, and it was just she's doing the lightsaber forms, but it's the Boken, and it was just all of it's so cool. It's such samurai stuff that I just lose my mind. I'm this, depending on how this ends, this could be the greatest moment for me in my whole Star Wars life, because I got Mandalorian season 3, which I know a lot of people have mixed feelings on, and it has its issues that I know, But I love that season. It's all about Mandalorian stuff, which is my favorite thing in Star Wars. And then this comes along, and it's already the characters I love, and then the whole series is just full on samurai. Like, it's just diving into that samurai aesthetic. And I love samurai. That's why I'm Invisiblekatana. I love, yeah, those are katanas back there. There you go. Oh, I forgot I had her right there until I looked at my TV and I was like, holy crap. Yeah, it's Hot Toys Ahsoka figure. This is the Clone Wars version, of course. When I get a buttload of money, I'll definitely get the Rosario Dawson version. But great episode, just to get on track. Obviously, this is a 420 review that's in the title, but I didn't actually say it. Normally, I have my baked sushi up there, but we had spacefaring combat, so we got Cowboy Bebop today. So Zacho was the first thing, just to actually focus and get through these notes. Him saying "you're the worst," definitely funny. I thought that was just great, and also during that scene, when Ahsoka says that to him, if you look behind her, when she's grabbing, I think she just grabs that's when she grabs the face mask. There were like 4 or 5 different lightsabers in there. Like, she had like quite a few lightsabers that obviously weren't hers. She has her own, but she had like 4 or 5 lightsabers actually lined up in the walls. And I was like, that's really interesting, because they can play with that if they really want to. Also, the table made a comeback. It came out of the ground and they were like putting stuff on it as it was rising. I was like, this is super cool. So I'm they need to put one of those in like every episode, just so I can be like, man, they built that, and it just looks so cool. So I love that. Table made an appearance. Great job on that. 10 out of 10. Ninja Ahsoka during the training, that was one of my favorite things ever, because this obviously taps into the samurai stuff, but I would love it if they actually did that in combat, where like they focus, obviously that's the the force speed that would just never makes an appearance after that first time they did it. And it's like, that's really unfortunate. Like, it's in the Jedi games fairly well. That's how you do your dodge attack. It's basically like a short form version of the force super speed, and I like that. It was a great idea. So I love how they use it in this, where that was like her using force speed, and it was a very ninja way to do it. And it's like, obviously we hear where she is, we know where she was supposed to be, and then it's like, are you sure? And it's like very funny. It's like, you would have died. And I love the way she just says it, like, matter of factly, like, this is the training we're doing. You don't have to do grandstanding gestures and well, not force lightning, that would be bad, but crazy force pushes and pulls and like blowing, like all sorts of Force Unleashed type stuff. It's like, hey, just tap into the force so you can fight better. You're already a Mandalorian. Just learn to see it coming. Just sense the things that are around you, the force being in everything, that sort of deal. So absolutely loved it. I thought that was amazing. Ninja Ahsoka is just really cool. The music was amazing. The opening, it was just that whole training segment, tons of samurai, tons of training dojo stuff. It was just great. So 100% love that. Jason, first off, gets referenced, and I was like, great, we got the name, we got Jason, very cool. When I put Thrawn got him gagging. As soon as she mentioned Thrawn, everybody shut up. I just thought that was really funny, so that was interesting. Also, Mon Mothma is a chancellor. They dropped that in there. I missed it. I actually heard that from another review that I watched just before. Because the immediate reaction, I want to hear what everybody's thinking, because it was such a good episode. Chancellor Mon Mothma. So I thought that was really cool. But I love that whole scene. Like, they were freaking out, and then of course Hera shut the one dude down. Was like, it's always I feel like that's in almost any series. It doesn't have to be Star Wars, it can be anything, and you have a character and then this random person who's like, well, I don't know if we can give those funds, and it's the ultimate comeback. Were you in the war? And then they always shut up. It's always written that way, and I find it funny, but it's still also a really good moment where it's like, especially when you're attached to the characters. Obviously, if you didn't watch Rebels, not so much, but for me, it's like, I've seen the stuff that they've done, and that's not even counting the actual movies. I saw the stuff from the show. That doesn't even count fighting in Endor and Rogue One and all that crap. So it's just really funny to see that. It's like, that was the instant shutdown. I do feel like that's going to be, I haven't watched them yet, but I know people are mad, and it's everyone's saying like it's the girl boss show and everything. Is like, it's just the timeline of the show, and they're sweet anyway, so I don't like, what does it matter? But and I'm just like, this is going to be one of those scenes where I'm like, I think somebody's going to say like, oh, and look at her being super strong. It's like, I find it funny. But it is what it is. I did write that down. I was just like, somebody's gonna get mad about that, and that doesn't make any sense. But hey, it happened. So I thought that was really cool. It also reminded me of a moment where I forgot exactly what Hera said, but it sounded very close to something Kanan once said in Rebels, where it was like, I survived one war, I don't want to fight in another one. And technically what they did in Clone Wars were like battles, but obviously at this point they've gone past Return of the Jedi, so that officially, like, that was the war. They were doing battles before, and then it was like, oh, those were like skirmishes compared to what ultimately ends up happening between the 3 films. So it's like, she's she's in that position where Kanan used to be, where it was like, I've already survived one more. Like I know what that looks like. I've been through that already. I'd like to not be in another one. So like, can you guys help us out? And of course they don't, which is crazy. It was like, Mon Mothma tried, it was like, because he threw Ezra out there and she was like, you don't know that. And then Mon Mothma was like, yo, let me see if I can talk to them, because you're getting emotional. So I'm gonna talk and we'll figure it out. And unfortunately it doesn't end up working, but that does lead to a great episode. We get some great action. But before that action, Jason shows up in live action, and that was super cool. I was like, okay, his hair is an insanely vibrant green, because I thought it was a little bit too bright in the finale. I was like, that's really bright. That was like neon. Like, it was very, very, very kinetic sand bright green, just to throw that reference in there if you saw my last review. But I thought that was cool. And of course, him being like, I want to be a Jedi, and then Hera smiled at him and was like, just like his dad. I was like, man, that's really good. So absolutely love that. We got to hear his name, and then he was actually shown. So that was very cool, and I love that. And who knows what they'll end up doing with that character going forward. But it was great to see him. So it's like, all right, they still haven't said Kanan yet, and I think it's possible. I mean, obviously it would only be for Rebels fans, but it could totally work. They could still save that for like a really emotional moment, where the first time they bring him up is where they just go through this deep thing where it's like they talk about losing Kanan and then losing Ezra, immediately, like so soon after, because all of that was in the finale. So I think that'll be a very interesting way to save that, where like they wait to say Kanan's name, and they could totally do it. They could just say it or whatever, but I'm like, what if they were saving it? Obviously, once again, it'll mostly be for Rebels fans, but I think people would enjoy it if it's an emotional scene no matter what. Plus it'll give them some context, at least a little bit deeper into the emotions of the characters, where it's like, why do they want Ezra so bad? For one, it's like, it's an old friend, but it's like, they know what it's like to actually have lost someone, and then they can get, bringing someone back from the dead is kind of how this has to feel, at this point. So it's like, it'll be interesting to see when they get to, there's going to be a moment for sure where someone's either close to crying or straight up cries. Like, there's no way they don't do that in this, because of the stuff they've gone through in Rebels. Like, this is the perfect way to do that, and you can like do it in live action. But we'll see if it happens. But I'm like, they have an ability to hit some insanely deep emotional stuff with these characters, considering everything they've been through, plus the movies. There's still some stuff there. So absolutely love that. I'm excited to see where the future goes for all that good stuff. But they had a really interesting thing that I never, once again, the familial stuff where it's like, oh, Ahsoka is basically Anakin's little sister, stuff like that. I didn't think about this, but they make a line about like, her being a non-traditional Jedi and everything, or Sabine. And then it's referenced like, well, you do come from a line of non-traditional Jedi. And I was like, wow, it's really interesting when you look at the whole saga, where obviously it's the Skywalker saga, but you can trace back all of these characters all the way up to Yoda, because it goes Yoda, Count Dooku, Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, Anakin, Ahsoka, and now we have Sabine coming up, being followed by her. And obviously Luke is in there, but that branches off from Obi-Wan. But that whole lineage is just like, those are a lot of people that did a lot of very big things within the realm of the Star Wars universe. And it's like, they may have felt like they played small bits and pieces, but it's like, Yoda trained Count Dooku trained Qui-Gon was the one that pushed Obi-Wan to train Anakin, and he jumped into it, and it's like all this stuff. And obviously that leads to Ahsoka, and then that leads to Vader and Luke Skywalker, the chosen one. Crazy lineage. Once again, all the family love stuff, the bloodlines and everything. Never really think about that much within Star Wars. Like, it's the Skywalker saga, and obviously characters are friends and this and that. But when you really look at it in the way that their lives are, these really are just like parents and grandparents and great grandparents, because that's how close the Jedi are when they actually train master and apprentice. It's a lifelong relationship. So it's very interesting to see it that way. So absolutely love that. I was like, what did I put here? The fighters that they had, it's not Satine. I already forgot her name, and obviously Satine, R.I.P. Satine. But the villain, we'll go the villain Padawan, whose name I totally can't. I want to say it's something. I feel like it starts with an S, and I'm pretty sure it does. Even if it doesn't, point is, their ships kind of look like pod racers to me, and I definitely think it was the yellow. 100% it was like, all right, they got like kind of blue and red on the back, and then the sides are just yellow, and I'm like, I can't help but instantly go pod racer when it looks like that. For half a second, like when they're flying in, they look like those ships from episode 1 that have like the really pointy legs when they stand up, and then once they're in close, I'm like, they look like pod racers. So it was weird having that fight sequence go on, and I'm like, it's so odd. Like, it was so weird that it felt intentional, where I'm like, from far away they remind me of this one thing from episode 1, but then up close they remind me of this other thing from episode 1, and I'm like, that could just be me thinking that, but at the same time, there's so much stuff, especially with Dave Filoni, where it's like, no, that was totally a reference. So I'm like, was that just in my head, or was it meant to look like two different things at one time? Like, obviously, like, you know, close enough color wise where it just reminds you of it. So don't know if that was on purpose. Would love to know your thoughts on that, because I was like, they look like don't know what they're called, like I said, little needle stepping dudes from episode 1 from far away, and then once they're up close, I'm like, it's just the color scheme and the big yellow at the front, where I'm just like, pod racer. And it's just automatic. I think whenever I just see that yellow, especially if you put it at the end sticking out, I'm like, well, that's a pod racer. That's all I can see. So I don't know if that was on purpose, but it kind of felt like it. So the whole team up sequence, everything through space was very well done. I also love the fact I can remember Morgan Elsbeth. I remember her whole name, but I cannot remember the Padawan's name anymore. I love their back and forth, because I was like, okay, that's interesting. I thought everything was like really cool, but they quip at each other. And at first it was Morgan saying it, and it was like kind of the classic thing when it's like, you know, like, I'm above you, you're the apprentice of the other dude who's actually really strong, so I'm stronger than you. And it's like, you know, I'm surprised you weren't able to take him down. And then of course they miss, and then, you know, she gets her comeback and it's like, oh, that's a great job, you almost got him. And I was like, so they don't really like each other that much. It's just kind of like she's following her boss, and then her boss is like working for this lady, but she's like, I don't like this lady though. So I thought that was very interesting. I was like, oh, that's the first time we've seen them really quip, because their conversations have basically just been the revelation of her being a Night Sister. And anyone would be surprised by that if they even knew what Night Sisters were. So that was kind of a normal reaction. And then this was like, oh, okay, that was very different from the minute reaction, you know, we've seen them have so far. And that felt more like they have that in them to go a little bit further with the antagonism. There'll be a great fight. I would imagine Morgan would win, but it depends on how far they really go with Night Sister magic and how far, of course, she's tapped into it. But I wouldn't hate that if somebody ended up fighting her and she decided to, you know, bust out the magic to really, you know, they're like right at the end and she's like, all right, you know what? I fought Ahsoka with a Mandalorian well, it wasn't a Mandalorian staff, but it was a Beskar staff. It's like, I fought it with that before, but I'm gonna just bust out the green flames. And it's like, okay, because I'd like to see it, but that's obviously a personal opinion. I think it could be done very well. But once again, it's just like with the flying lightsabers, like, how far will he take it though? Like, will he show like all the crazy green flames? Is it going to be really simplified, or is he just going to throw, you know, have a dude fly on a lightsaber? We have to wait and see. Keep hope alive, I guess. If you're really looking for it, keep hope alive. But I don't know about the flying. The flames might be there, but I don't know about the flying. Standard operating procedure, I thought that was really good. Zhu Yang, once again, forgot. Once he wakes up, it's like, okay, you guys are good. Like, you're back together, and they smile at each other. It's like, all right, they, almost died a bunch. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. The team is back together, so that was definitely well done. I think that's pretty much it. And Chancellor Mon Mothma, I put that in a little later. So, fantastic episode 3. Love the action. Always want to see more lightsaber action. But the reason I'm so hype about this episode is because, first off, they did something that I hope they would do, and it's the thing that most stories don't do. It's like, all right, we're gonna do this, and they actually did do it in The Mandalorian as well, where it was like, okay, this is the thing that we want to see happen. How long is it gonna take? And then it's the very next episode. It's like, oh, okay. In Mandalorian, it was like, all right, we're going to Mandalore now. And it's like just the next episode, and it was like, yeah, that's where we're going. And in this, it was like, all right, well, that's the planet where the bad guys are. The good guys want to see what's going on. Not only do they scan the whole machine, I'm sure they'll end up escaping with those schematics, but they scan the whole machine, they get past everybody, and then they actually land in the forest on the planet. So the next episode is going to be insane, and it's going to be round 2 between Sabine and the other one. So I wish I could remember her name. And I'm pretty sure in the trailer, that's when she actually talks to Sabine, where she's like, you aren't connected to the force. She says you don't have any power, I think is what she's told her. So if that's in the next episode, which I assume it would have to be, the next one's going to be amazing. Because, I think I mentioned this in my other review. Ahsoka comes out on top. Guaranteed. It'll look cool, but it's going to be Ahsoka. Sabine could still get hurt. I don't think he'll do it. But, and I mentioned the same thing I said before, a lot of people get their hands chopped off all the time. It's just a Star Wars thing. It happens. They could do it where she still loses the second battle. And this was kind of their second battle where they did the space thing. And I was like, okay, but that was still both of them working together to get past a bunch of people. This isn't Sabine's trial. So I'm very excited because all of her battles are the ones I'm looking forward to see where do they take her exactly? Is she going to be an overall force user? I'm definitely thinking they're going to go with the sensory stuff, because she's already a good enough fighter, so she can just train in that way and just know, you know, like a bit of clairvoyance, and you know, it's kind of the normal Jedi thing, but her, you know, take hers to the extreme. So I'm excited to see where they go with it. I can't wait to see what happens. I assume we're also going to get the Merrick fight in the next episode, because everyone's fighting somebody in the forest. So I'm like, all right, they're going to do that. I assume he dies, because there is a scene where Ahsoka is walking up to Ray Stevenson's character. So I'm like, you know, if there's 2 bad guys and 2 good guys, and then one of those good guys leaves, I don't think she's gonna leave her friend with the 2 bad guys. So it's like, just doing that math, and the guy with no face, and there's so many, I've mentioned this before, there's 5 villains. The guy with no face is like, I don't know, if he disappeared, you know, like, you know, put a sticker on the graveyard, because we don't know what he looked like. But we'll see what happens. I'm excited for it. I think we're gonna get 2 lightsaber fights, and whatever happens, as far as Sabine is what I'm looking forward to the most. Like, I definitely want to see where they go with the whole, and you know, Ahsoka says that she wouldn't really be a Mandalorian, you know, it's like she doesn't have to be a Jedi, doesn't have to be a Mandalorian Jedi, so she can be in there in the middle. So I'm excited to see where they take her character and what connection to the Force she ultimately gathers, because I think that's going to be really nice. But the next episode is good, like, and I'm very excited to see where do we go after that, because I'm like, all right, this was a good episode. The next episode is just going to be a bunch of action, and then it's going to be, you know, simple action as far as Ahsoka is going to be cool and stuff, and then Sabine is like the story beat, like, you know, what's her advancement, how she's going to get out of this. And then after that, if they do all of that in one episode and they're fighting Ray Stevenson's character at the end, then I don't know what they do next. Like, once you leave that planet and go back, who gets followed, where do they go? Like, there's so many questions, like what happens when they leave this planet, because that's like the next chunk of the show now. So I'm very excited for next week's episode, and I was just like, I was so mad when it was ending. I was just like, they're like right on the cusp of 2 lightsaber fights, and one of them a rematch. Actually, they would both be rematches, so either way, I'm looking forward to all the lightsaber action in the next one and seeing exactly how that ends up playing out. So we'd love to know your thoughts on this whole episode, expectations and hopes. I would love to know where everyone thinks Sabine is headed. If you guys have any thoughts on the theory of, as far as her being like a sensory type Force user, we'd love to know your thoughts on that, because I feel like they're going to keep it simple, where she has, and especially with the Zatoichi thing, I'm like, it's a connection, 100% it is. So that's going to be like her big move. And then, you know, so I don't know how they're going to do it. It's going to be like some epic super mega dodge. Maybe she'll do the ninja move, and then, you know, they'll do the actual anime slash. See what happens. But I'm looking forward to all of her advancement, and, you know, whatever they do in general with the rest of these characters, because it's 3 for 3. And I know that's only 3, but it was a good 3. It was a really good 3 episodes, and I think we only got 9. So I'm excited to see where it goes. It seems like they're not wasting time. So I'm hoping that keeps, and it's Dave Filoni doing it himself. He wrote every episode. I think this might end up being like one of the best written Star Wars, like, just seasons, period. Like, I feel like that's how it's going to be, especially if you're a Rebels fan. But I think this is truly going to flow consistently, as best as a lot of people may have seen from, like, you know, maybe early seasons of Mandalorian, stuff like that. Except I think it will genuinely carry so tightly over the whole season, and that's just because of everything he's admittedly done before. It's really like just an actual track record, and I feel like we might get that. I think this might be one of the big ones where it's like, dang, like, this is gonna go down in a really big way. So that's how I feel right now. My hype levels are very high. It feels like just one of those arcs, and I'm like, I think this is just one of those arcs, and it's gonna be good from beginning to end, where it's just like, that's just one of them, because there's a couple, and a lot of them admittedly, especially very recently, Dave Filoni. So I'm excited. 3 for 3. I think it's going to be 100%. I'm definitely hoping. I also hope we get a random reference to Darth Maul. I think that'll be very well done. My favorite character personally is Darth Maul. It's like Darth Maul, and then probably Ahsoka and Luke, like, on the same level. And then admittedly, that's because I just didn't read a lot of the book, so I know Luke is up there, but technically I know more about Ahsoka, so slight bias. And Darth Maul I just love. Like, once that double-sided lightsaber came out, I was like, this guy, he's the one. That's just how it's going to be. It's Darth Maul for me. But love Ahsoka, love Luke, of course. We'll see what they do with all that good stuff. Doubt he'll make an appearance. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to be very strictly Filoni characters. We might get Hondo. This might finally be the one. I know I said, what if we got Cal Kestis here? We might get Hondo. I thought Mandalorian was the perfect time for that, like Mandalorian or Boba Fett. This is it. Ahsoka, we're getting Hondo. I'm saying it now. Hondo live action. Ahsoka, for sure. We'd love to know your thoughts, so please let me know. Good, bad, happy, sad, all those good things, expectations, hopes, dreams, all things Star Wars. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching. Hit my effing mic.
You hungry? I'm hungry. I'm hungry. I'm hungry. You hungry? Yeah, I'm hungry. Like I'm hungry. I'm hungry. Like I'm Shaggy. Man, I'm hungry. Man, I'm hungry. I'm hungry. Yeah, man. You hungry? Yeah, I'm hungry.